What you had then, you didn't have the Federal Reserve. You had a monetary commission that was run by a Wall Street financier. They're the ones who set the interest rates and how much money the Treasury would print. You know what? The thing is, this is why I have mixed emotions. Who the hell is, who really wants to know about this, and who doesn't want to know about this? I mean, this is hot stuff. Okay, so they have the investigation. When they're finished with the investigation, J.P. Morgan goes to Italy. Which, by the way, why does it go to Italy? Well, in 1904, the Bank of Italy started in San Francisco. One of the biggest banks we had in the United States. When the Depression came in 1930, it became the Bank of America because of the Depression. You can't have a Bank of Italy run. It's because of the Bank of America. So J.P. Morgan Sr. goes to Italy, and in a couple of weeks he dies there. Now, I don't know from what, but he died. So J.P. Morgan Jr. takes over. He's ready to go. He's ready to go. He's all groomed and ready to go. So 1913 comes along, and everybody they know there's a war coming in Europe. Big-time war. So in 1913 they said, well, how the war is coming, and we're going to be involved in this if no other reason to get rich and make money. But us 11 big shots do not have enough money for a war of this magnitude. Where are we going to get money? They passed the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, which was income tax. Never before was it legalized. It was passed by the Supreme Court one time, and it was knocked down. Finally, in 1913, the 16th Amendment was passed, income tax. That's where they're going to get the money, okay, to invest in the war, and at the same time start a draft up. So, in 1913, the same year, they formed the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be the watchdog for the Treasury. And the guys on the Federal Reserve are the same financiers. It's all in there.
Al, I know that in that area, in this whole area you're talking about, you really say that if we had listened to Wilson at the time, none of this other stuff would happen. That's really the thrust of what you're saying, isn't it?
If we'd have listened to Woodrow Wilson in 1917 and 1918, we would not have had World War II and all the subsequent wars. But he was so far ahead of his time, and all the people at that time agreed. He's an idealist. He's way ahead of time. This is not the world is. And they were right. The world was not ready for Woodrow Wilson. Now this is a step towards enlightenment. That's what this is. It's a small step. Okay? It's a huge step with all of these events. But you give this to kids in school, like this publisher in Pennsylvania is publishing it for it. And I'm sure he's going to try to get the schools to use it because it's small, it's cheap, and boy, does it have information. I mean, if that doesn't stir up curiosity in an intelligent, bright young kids and the teachers who never learned this when they went to college 20 years ago. Oh, I'm telling you, there's stuff in that book. I just picked up the meat. There's one guy who was chancellor in Germany. He used to be the head of the Center Party. His name was Brüning. Okay, he leaves Germany in 1934. It's possible he thought Hitler was going to kill him. Okay, but he ends up going to the United States. In 1937, he's teaching at Harvard University from 1937 to 1956. Now, what is he teaching? Is he teaching anti-communism or fascism? I don't know. You got it?
Al Carey wants to know if you think that this chain of events leading up to Hitler running Germany was something that could have been predicted.
Okay. Wilson doesn't want to get into the war. And he's got some pretty sharp advisors, one of them being Walter Lippmann. Walter Lippmann was a young but a very, very strong advisor for Woodrow Wilson. You have to go to the library and read up. There's books on Walter Lippmann that were wrote his biographies, and he was a very, very brilliant. He became one of the biggest names in the newspaper business. Okay, so anyway, he's advising Wilson, and I'm coming up with this little scenario that is saying, look, what we got to do is we got to stay out of this war, because if we stay out of the war, then these people will exhaust themselves, and And then one by one, they'll all overthrow their governments, as they did in Russia. Now, this is what I'm thinking they're talking about. Okay? They're saying this in 1914, 1915, because the war is already on a few years, and these guys are getting their ass beat, and we got to stay out. So Wilson's doing everything he can really to stay out. In 1915, there's a guy, a German military attaché in Washington, D.C., named von Papen, who became a very, very big figure, okay, later on. And while he's there, the Lusitania is sunk in 1915. So immediately after it's sunk, he gets sent back to Germany as possible espionage and sabotage. They kick him out and send him back to Germany. Okay, he goes back and gets into politics in Germany with the Center Party, by the way. So apparently he's a Catholic. Not putting down the Catholics, but they have played a big role. They played a big role because they were trying to save the church. I don't blame them, because when Stalin got in there, he did. So they were fighting for survival in Europe, the church. So I can understand why they did what they did, and probably didn't realize things were going out of control either. But anyway, so you had a situation where Wilson's trying to keep us out of the war, and in fact, he makes a speech. In 1917, it said, "Peace without victory," and he gave it to our Congress. You know, how we could have peace, and he was trying to negotiate peace before we get into the war. And the German war hawks don't want to hear nothing of it. They don't give a shit. And the French, and everybody else that's involved over there, and the Russians. Okay, this is before Russia had their revolution, but it was getting close. Okay, so anyway, finally, Germany announces they're going to have unrestricted submarine warfare because the United States is sending war materials to their enemy. We're going to sink your ships, man. You're aiding and abetting our enemy. You're not at war with us, but we can't allow you to do this. And they go back to, freedom of the seas, freedom of the seas, and all the people, freedom of the seas. The Germans are sinking our ships, and it's freedom of the seas. Okay, get it? I mean, it's so naive, it's ignorant, yet it works. It works. The people eat it up. So finally, people are pissed off because of that, and then they're coming out with all kinds of pictures of Germans bayoneting babies and women, and the Hun. They call them the Hun. The Huns were not even Germans. The Huns were the guys from Mongolia. They were the Huns. If you study history, the Huns are not Germans. They call them the Huns because people are stupid. It's a quick, easy name to remember, the Huns. Supposedly, and I think rightly so, some German big shot sent a letter to Mexico, exhorting Mexico to declare war on the United States, and Germany would help them to reclaim their lost lands that the United States took it away from. And supposedly a letter was even sent to Japan to get them involved, to keep us busy in the Pacific, even back then in 1917. Get it? Yep. So, anyway, when they put that in the newspaper, Germans send a letter to Mexico asking them to declare war. Everybody is saying, goddamn Germans, who the hell do they think they are? Over there, they start singing a song, getting all ready, and meanwhile, naturally, Wall Street's ecstatic. I mean, they're going to make billions on this, and this is the way to go. I mean, this is the military-industrial complex getting its feet wet in the United States, big time. So the next thing is they force Wilson to declare war on Germany because of these events. The unrestricted submarine warfare, the threat of Germany telling Mexico to go to war against us, and all kinds of other propaganda that was built in. And so then you say, meanwhile, in the United States, the Russian Communist Party, led by a woman named Emma Goldman, and some other guys, they're against the draft. They don't want the United States to go into war. Why? Because if the United States goes into war, one by one, they all go communist. Germany collapses, France collapses, and that's what the communists want. So that's why they don't want us to get in the war. If you analyze this thing, I have a little background. I worked electronics industry in production as a production analyst, so somebody thought I could analyze things. So maybe I do have a little knack, okay, so to speak. But anyway, this is how we got into World War I. We were forced into it with those conditions. So then I go to my little scenario, Lippmann, Colonel House, another one of his big shots. They all get together. Well, look, here's the story. We have to get into the war. Let's get it over as soon as possible. All right? And then after the war, we'll save the world. Okay, we'll come up with this 14 points. We'll have a League of Nations. We'll have total disarmament and the war to end all wars. 2 months later, the Russians have their first revolution in February up there in St. Petersburg. The next one is down in Moscow, the big one down there. So anyway, in the book there, so we didn't get into the war until after Russia had its revolution started. One theory, if you want to look at the right-wing theory, would be that we must end the war before the rest of Europe succumbs to revolution. We got to help France and England survive the war, otherwise all of Europe is going to go communist. This is true. I'll prove this why. After we signed the armistice in 1918, the Germans revolted in Berlin. It was called the Free Corps or something like that. The German communists revolted 2 times, and they were fine. One of them was called the Spartacist Revolution, to overthrow the system there, to have communism. After this, all of the countries got together and they sent troops into Russia to try to get their guy in power, which was the so-called White Russians, a more moderate revolutionaries they felt that they could deal with, like we have done in every war since then. We're still doing, which is normal. It's the best human beings can do. Give it all a complex quagmire, quicksand of consternation we're in. What else can we do? We just struggle. We just struggle and trying to do what they think is right. So we have England, France, United States, Japan, and Czechoslovakia send troops into Russia to try to get the revolution their way. And that lasts till about 1921. Finally, they figured the job is too big. So they get out and they figure out the next plan came in 1924 when they said, well, what we'll do is rearm Germany. Boy, I'm telling you, if this isn't logic, pure logic, I mean, I'm embellishing a little bit, putting my own spin on it, but by George, it's hard. I would love to somebody give me some arguments to the contrary. Okay, folks, I want to thank you for your forbearance in listening to me tonight, and I hope it's given you some new insight and to new events that actually happened. It's all listed in my little chronology workbook, and you were instructed to draw your own conclusions. Do the best you can with it. Best of luck.